Hello, this is Rock Our World again with the second video past what I thought I would do, 102. I was having trouble uploading my videos. Our rural equipment and services are pretty slow. Anyway, I drove into Regina to my son-in-law's studio. He is super fast, high speed, connected very closely to the main fiber optic cable that runs across Canada. Anyway, I had an hour to think, and I'm going to add something. I was reminded, I'm often reminded of this, but in Revelation, there's a point earlier in the book where it says that the angels held back the four winds of heaven. And I think that's the point where the 144,000 are marked for divine protection. At any rate, we've had this is the second day there's been no wind at all, and that's very unusual in Saskatchewan. Even one day is unusual, but we're in the second day now. There's not a breath of wind, and I'm reminded again. Anyway, exactly how these events in Revelation unfold and how close to literal and metaphoric everything is, we'll see that more clearly when we are after the game, the fifth quarter I keep referring to. That's a joke we make here, especially in Saskatchewan. Our good old Rough Riders from Rough Rider Nation, the Saskatchewan Rough Riders, they seem to do more losing than winning, but there's fun watching them and fun cheering them on. So we do the analysis after the game's over. It's always a lot easier than before the game begins to see what we could have done, should have done, what this meant, what that meant. At any rate, on my trip in, I was reminded of something I'd said, some episodes back. I was pointing out the differences between how God thinks and how we as humans think. And one of them is the concept of the Jubilee Cycles. That's what God uses in his system, and it's brought out very clearly in the book of Jubilees. So make sure you read that book, get a hold of those whole 7. I gave you an updated version of Joseph Lumpkin's book. Order it from Amazon. It's available. One of our gals did some research and found that and ordered the book, and it came, and it in fact has more books than what the one I've been showing you has. It used to be called Divergent Doctrines. That's a longer name than that. But now there's a new one by Joseph Lumpkin, the Great... I gave you the title a couple episodes back. But get that book. And in one of those books... Well, the Book of Jubilees for sure is in there. But there's a few more things you're going to find interesting. I'll hopefully bring them to mind as I talk here. And on my trip in, I thought of a lot of things. But the main thing is this, that in a Jubilee cycle is 49 years. That's 7 sets of 7 Sabbaths of the land. In that same Sabbath year, debts are forgiven. And then the 50th year, all land is returned to its rightful owner, like the family ownership. And these two particular rules in God's Torah prevent the economic chaos that we have had for 6,000 years. And we have the depressions, like the Great Depression in the 30s, and we had the meltdown in 08, and we're on the verge of a world economic meltdown. And the powers that be, the elite, that are orchestrating all the things that are dead ahead of us, they're going to use that as an opportunity to introduce a world currency and get the things in place for receiving the mark of the beast, so we can't buy and sell without whatever that might look like, whether it's a chip implanted in under our skin somewhere, or we're going to find out. And there's one of the books mentions this. I'm going to say it's either Baruch, Second Baruch, or the Apocalypse of Thomas, one of these 7 books. At any rate, read all 7, you'll find this, that there's a prediction in there, a prophecy, that as these last days unfold, that all the pensions will be lost, everybody's pension. And the way it words it, says this guy that's orchestrating, putting together this world power to pay for everything, he steals the money from the older people. And that's my interpretation of what that means, that we will all lose our pensions. I'm very close to that spot. I have a partial pension. I'm 63, but at 65 I get a full pension. And there's lots of pensions. Teachers get a real good pension. I have my oldest sister has married a teacher, and they get 2 really nice pensions, and for their hard work all those years in the education system. Anyway, everyone's going to lose their pension. And I've mentioned this before. When we take a look at what happened in Greece, that's a forerunner of what we're all looking at. We're going to lose, doesn't matter how much money we have in the bank, we're going to lose access to it. So that would be a heads up in the very near future. Take your money out of the bank and spend it on something that might go a little bit further. And one of them is God's work. Whatever you see as being God's work, read Rick Joyner's visions. There's a few ideas God gave to him by a ton of Bibles. The various versions that I have mentioned are the better ones. And the old King James and the newer King James are not great, but they are needed to go along with the concordance. And also look at the loss of our use of technology. These EMPs and masks, MCEs, are all going to increase, and we might have short and long interruptions of communication, and we might have a complete blackout for several years. So it's good to get a hold of a good concordance, so you can do your studying in those difficult times that are ahead of us. There was something else I was going to mention in one of these books, predictions. Maybe that was the only one. That we're going to be losing our pensions. We're going to lose access to our bank accounts. Anyway, to get to my main point, in the Jubilee cycle, I mentioned this earlier, that what God calls 49 years, he doesn't count the 50th year, but there's a 50th year on either side of the 49. So when we go to Second Baruch, I'm going to guess is how you pronounce it, he asked the Lord point blank, he says, how long are the last days? And the Lord's answer was, it comes in 2 parts, and it lasts 49 years. And I think he worded it 7 weeks of years. In other words, a Jubilee cycle. But the Lord has already showed us he's not counting the 50th year. But see, there's a 50th year on both sides of it. So this is my idea, that I've been saying and teaching and speculating that this year is the end of the Jubilee year. On the Day of Atonement is when it starts and ends. One Jubilee ends, the next one starts. The idea that came to me that perhaps this October 2nd, which is the Day of Atonement, signals the beginning of the last year of the previous Jubilee cycle. And that would still leave the count at 49 years, like he told Baruch. But it gives us one more year to get things in place. And I just been thinking, there's a lot of things I'd like to have in place before the trouble really gets. There's a term we use in a little more crass than the crap hits the fan. If you throw some doo-doo against a turning fan, whether it's in your vehicle or moving air around the house, you end up with a mess. So we're going to have a mess when this economic system breaks down, collapses, and increasing judgments and increasing troubles. It'd be real nice to have one more year. And I just was thinking that it still fits in God's timing and terminology and the way he describes things, that we could have one more year, that October 2nd is the beginning day of the last year of the last Jubilee, of this present Jubilee, or the last one, however you want to say it. And then the Day of Atonement next fall is the changeover from one Jubilee to the next, one 50-year period to the next. And some things I could say are potential predictions. And I've said this before, that I could see not having a single crop worldwide. Now, this past year was a Sabbath year. If this is all true, this past year would have been the 49th year, and we're not to have a crop seeded this year. Now, we've had a very poor crop worldwide. Australia was down 40%, it sounded like. I'm not sure how ours came out here in Canada, but between Australia and Canada, we're I'd say the two largest exporters of grain worldwide. Anyway, that part doesn't matter as much what number we are, but we are large exporters, and our crop is definitely down. The percentage, I don't know. The States' crop is down. And anyway, we've had a poor year worldwide, but next year could be nothing. And that would fit with the Lord's instructions that we're not to put a crop in on the 50th year or the 49th. But the 50th is very, very special year. And I could see the Lord taking the crop away completely. And he did say this, that during the last days, the land would enjoy its Sabbaths, the ones that we never gave it. One tiny exception is my little 8 acres of wheat. A possible exception. It's received a full 19 Sabbaths. It's been a horse pasture, which is interesting because since it was broken in 1906, it should have had 19 Sabbaths. And it's all caught up. And then my wife and I gave it a couple more, our whole farm of, right now it's 480 acres. Gave it its rest through the years we farmed it, every 7th year, more or less. Anyway, maybe I can put a little crop in that little piece. Nonetheless, I had a beautiful crop this year. I have some good hard wheat put away. I'm a farmer, my wife and I. Good garden. And if what I'm describing to you turns out to be what happens, there will be no crop at all worldwide next year. It'll cause a lot of hunger. It'll help soften the hearts of people, especially here in Saskatchewan, to receive the Torah. And I've predicted that the Torah would begin the white horse would begin its ride right here in southern Saskatchewan. And In some ways it already has happened, but we'll see how this all works out looking back at it. So one final thought in all this: if you have been watching and accepting my message as potentially accurate, and you have lots of money, that would be one place you could put your money. Read Rick Joyner's visions, buy all these books. In fact, buy multiple copies of all these books I've talked about. Have a resource that would be available during the last days of what I'm saying is 50 years. And another thing you could do is help me get my farm in place, everything in place for a place of safety. I believe there will be either 6 nations or 6 portions of land outside of the land of Israel that will be an end-time fulfillment of the cities of refuge, and that there will be then 6 cities within Israel that will also be cities of refuge, because Israel will have its troubled times in these 50 years also, and especially the time of its judgment that I talked about, and Yeshua talked about when he said, when you see the armies surround Jerusalem, you see this abominable thing put in the Holy of Holies, then run for the hills. Don't go back, get anything, just get out of town. And judgment is coming on Jerusalem and upon Israel. In the same way, judgment is coming upon all of us in the whole world, and in particular, the Christian people and the Jewish people, because we're the ones that should know our God, and we don't at this point. We simply have a form of religion. We don't respect the Lord's Torah. The Jewish people made one up called the Oral Torah. They give it more respect than what God gave us, considering one of the Torah instructions is don't add to the Torah and do not subtract. Christians, on the other hand, have subtracted a good portion of the Torah, saying it's done away with, which doesn't agree with Yeshua, Jesus Christ, when he said in Matthew, now I've gone through this a zillion times, 14, 15 to 17, do not think I came to do away with the law. I came to fulfill it. Not a single detail of the Torah will pass away. Heaven and earth will pass away, but not a single detail will of the Torah. And anyone who breaks the least commandment and teaches others to do the same will be called least in the kingdom. And anyone who keeps the instructions of the Torah, and there are about 600 of them, 1 or 200 would apply to any one individual. That person who does that and teaches others to do the same will be called great in the kingdom. So, are you following that instruction from our Lord Yeshua, Jesus Christ, or Yahweh to the Jewish people? Or are you believing the lies found in the Christian church and the Jewish church? With that, I'll call it a wrap. I'm thinking this will be the last one. Hopefully see you after we get back from Israel. Neil Buchanan. Rock Our World, Daniel 2, not 12 like I said the last one.